Hey everyone, Lane Wilkins. Hey, I'm back real quick with kind of not a rant, it's not a drill either, but just a thought. I was sitting there thinking to myself, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and checking out other people's stuff, and a lot of great content out there. So glad to see that. Also glad to see some people calling out other people's absolute nonsense. McDojo, I've been really getting a kick out of that one. That's great. So if you haven't seen that, go check that out. It's a lot of fun. But this guy, he's like finding these people that are just doing really bad stuff, bad business, doing dangerous things, really poor, just nonsense. But it's great channel. Anyhow, so I started watching that. I watched Sensei Seth and some of those guys, and the Karate Nerd, Jesse Incamp, so on and so forth. So just I watch karate stuff, and some of the people that do entertaining things, I get a kick out of them, so I watch them. So I started thinking, I'm really into self-defense, right? So I have to really be careful, and I have, when I did karate and stuff, so it was more of a sporting. There was a sporting aspect to it. My instructor, my original instructor, Mr. Vaught, he was, and his instructor, Ed Daniels, were both in the Dallas Police Department, and I don't know if Mr. Daniels did or not, but I know Mr. Vaught used to teach the Dallas Police Department, self-defense, right? Using hands and the tonfas and whatever, all that kind of stuff. So he was a very, and the cool thing about when I first started working out with Mr. Vaught is he told me, he said, look, Lane, he goes, I use all this karate stuff. He said, I've trained, for many, many years, and I'll teach you, I'll teach you all of it, but I'll tell you what really works on the street, because I've tried a lot of it, right? So it was kind of cool to have that perspective. With that being said, over a while he was injured, and he really started gravitating towards Aikido. It was kind of big back in then. It was the early 90s, and stuff, and maybe about mid 90s he started kind of transitioning over there because he had hurt his back really bad and he couldn't do karate at all, and so, which was great, but I just wasn't my thing, right? I learned some Aikido, thought it was kind of cool to some degree, and most of it, have to have a willing partner to do all this fancy stuff. But regardless, there were some good aspects from it. I took it and I used it, right? But let's fast forward down the road. I still stayed on that really heavy self-defense thing. I love to spar and I like to work out with people, so don't get me wrong. I love to get in there and do my karate stuff with my buddies and my instructors. Mr. McBride and I used to spar every weekend. We did that for years, and that was one of the things we always look forward to. And now that I'm getting older, I don't have a chance to spar anymore. Plus, I don't have a lot of people to spar with because I've moved, right? But I still love that self-defense piece. And so I started thinking, is there things from self-defense and from sporting type of martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, judo, karate, taekwondo, blah, 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 right? Just on and on and on. Those type of, that are sports, not the guys and gals that are taking those and using them for other things. I'm talking about the sports. I'm talking about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys that I see. The first they do is they get on their butts and start squirming around to grab someone's leg. I mean, if you do that in the streets, you will get killed, okay, in a real fight. I'm just telling you that straight up for you BJJ guys. Now, the ones that are in there that are actually going through a wrestling type of attack or a judo attack to the ground with punches, good on you, man. That's the way you do it in real life stuff. But falling on your butt and then chasing someone around to grab their legs to do some monkey, mumbo jumbo. That's great for tournament stuff, right? Just like judo practitioner when they throw someone, they do, I think it's Nippon, they throw them on the ground, they're back, and yay, they're done. Or a karate guy, they kick somebody in there, yay, they're done, right? That doesn't work in the streets. And if you practice too much like that, you're going to get your head in the wrong place when it comes time for actual really fighting for your life type of stuff, right? So just keep that in mind. Yeah. So I was thinking to myself, is this stuff transferable, right? So I started looking at, I took the self-defense in sports, I put them side by side, and that's what I want to talk about. So stick around and let's dive into this, all right? Okay, so I hope I'm not too much of the way here, but I'm losing my eyesight a little bit as I'm getting older. But so here's what I did. I took my self-defense stuff, and these I'm gonna do a lesson on these, like a really in-depth lesson. But to me, my tenets of self-defense, to make it simple and to make it so people can memorize it and keep it and kind of in the forethought when they're having to deal with a bad situation, right? So mine are this way, right? So you hear me talk about in our lessons like breaking the attackers down. And what I mean by breaking them down is I mean breaking them down. Gouge them in the eyes, right? The stomps, the push kicks. I'm talking the things that I'm teaching, the really heavy-handed, hard attack, right? It's the violence, right? It's the level of violence that you throw. What I mean by breaking them down is when you start to break somebody down in a fight, and if you've been in enough fights, even if it's sporting stuff, you'll start to see them. When you start to do it, they start to wince, right? They start to move backwards. They're on their heels because you have hit them so hard and so fast with so much violence and so much strength and speed that freaks them out, right? And that's why I always say the eye gouge stuff, because you poke anyone, I don't care how big you are, you jam them in the eyes. I don't care if you get them by their ears and stick those thumbs in your eyes, or you just do a quick jab in the eye, or do that claw jab that I was showing you earlier, you stick and go down, back flick, just do those flicks. It gets people's hands up. It lets you throw those big crosses and, knee stomps and whatever you want to do, right? So I said, okay, so break down your attacker. That's the very first thing we do. If we're attacked, we hit them full blast, everything we've got, and we use our training to start getting them broke down and moving back. So I look at the sports, kind of the same thing, right? You look at the sports, you're breaking your opponent down, not your attacker. So it's a difference, right? I don't have to go in with such violence and so much stuff. It's an opponent. My job is to start to work and timing and figure out what they're doing, that I can find their weaknesses so that I can jump in on, right? So from karate standpoint, that's why I was telling you with the zone fighting. Sometimes I'll get out in zone 4. If I'm getting whipped really good, I'll get out of zone 4 so they can't kick me, can't hit me, can't do anything. And I watch their feet, I watch their timing, I watch their movements. I make them come to me, because when they have to close those gaps, that's when I'm the best, is when people are trying to close gaps on me, because it's always kind of been proven within that sparring stuff in those zones. When you're coming through and breaking those zones and you're approaching, you're putting yourself up for, you're walking in while somebody's planted, sitting, right, or coming in at you, right? So it's just a bad spot to be. Okay, so I think that's pretty translatable to some degree, right? It makes sense. Then the second one is separating from your attacker. So remember I talk about, we don't want to tie up, we don't want to do jiu-jitsu, we don't want to do wrestling, and I'm not saying that we don't need to learn that stuff. I'm just saying we don't want to do that on the street. To me, that doesn't make sense to get on the ground, because I'll tell you the next one. But when you get on the ground, you lose control and sight of your environment, right? So you don't want to do that. For an attacker, for your attacker, you want to separate. But from a sport, sometimes you want to break from your opponent, but sometimes you don't. If you're jiu-jitsu, wrestling, judo, you want to keep on those people, right? So to some degree, not very translatable over to the sports side and vice versa, right? Because you train to do that, and then on the street, you really need to make sure that you have kind of an equal time spent on training on both of those, so that you don't go in there thinking this is a match, right? This is actual real life stuff, okay? So this one, I'm gonna put an X on it, just because I think that there's different training styles. I'll put a check on that one. I think there's different training styles for self-defense versus sport. And you have to, in my personal opinion, I know, like I said, some of this stuff is translatable, but you have to train in self-defense to be a good self-defense guy. You have to train in your style of martial art to be a good sport person, right? Like I can't train in karate and then think I want to be some awesome wrestler, right? I have to be a wrestler to be a good wrestler. So I think self-defense, you get to kind of blend. That's what I always talk about. What's the best martial arts for self-defense? There isn't one. It's a blend, right? So not transferable in my opinion. Number 3, situational awareness, which goes back to our number 2 one, right? You hear me say keeping your head on a swivel. If I'm in a fight and I'm in a crowded bar or whatever, I don't care if it's in the street, whatever, and I have an attacker coming in, and I'm fighting this individual off, right? If I'm not looking around for his buddy, right, then he or she or whatever could sneak up on me, you know, get a hold of me from behind or come on the side. So if I'm over here wrestling with somebody, and then, you know, like I told you, back in my day, if someone did that, it just, you know, your head would be a football and we'd be trying to make a goal with it, right? So I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be on the ground. I want to get out of there, right? I want to live and move on. If I don't care if it looks like I'm, you know, I'm not going to be the, you know, the martial arts superstar hero in the movies. It takes 15 people on. I want to get the heck out of there, right? I want to get home to my family, okay? So I think from a sporting thing, right, we're talking about, we go over here, it's controlling their opponent, right? To me, when I'm sparring and stuff, or even in I didn't get a lot of tournaments, but a couple tournaments here and there, but even in those situations, I wasn't trying to, you know, keep my head about. You know, I wasn't looking around. I'm focused on this one individual. I'm fighting this one individual, and that's who I'm going after, right? So really, it's controlling my opponent. It's not keeping my head on a swivel at all. So again, I don't think this is translatable either. Okay, that's just my opinion. I think this one, again, you need to train. When you're fighting, that I'm fighting, and if I've got someone in a situation where I've got them down and they're moving backwards, I can look around, right? And then I can either find my getaway or I can find the next person coming in. You know, bam, that impact of violence and just destroying and knocking that individual back and getting up and ready to go again. That's where your head needs to be, not concentrating on just a single fighter for a long time. Although I'm not saying that you can't. If this single fighter is your only person that you need to be taking care of, concentrate on that. But you still want to be aware of what's going on. And I think from a sporting event, you don't have to worry about that, right? It's you and your opponent, and you fight, and that's it. Okay. So I think there's some training thing there that that would be very helpful to do. Okay. The fourth one is minimizing damage. Remember, I talked about we want to make sure that we're receiving the least amount of damage during these altercations. A good point when I talked about using the hand slaps, right? If I'm punching somebody and I feel, uh-oh, man, I just messed up my hand, stop using your fist. Open that hand up and start, you know, palm slapping and hitting those ears, right? Eye jabbing, whatever you need to do. Don't allow don't allow the stress and the adrenaline to take over your body and to hurt yourself to a point where you can't continue. That I can't pick my knife up and fight with it, you know, if I have to, or I can't draw my firearm to fire. Make sure that you're keeping your head right, best you can. I know this is hard to say, especially when it's a really scary event. You know, we don't go through that every day. It's hard to train that way. But I think if you train in the dojo or wherever, you're training to keep your mind on this stuff, right? Is not to be tied up, not to be doing all this crazy nonsense and throwing high kicks and putting yourself in danger where you don't need to, right? And then hopefully you can get out of that with maybe some scratched up hands and maybe a bloody nose and a busted lip or whatever, right? And you're the heck out of there, okay? So I don't think that's I think that is probably the key thing, right, in sporting as well. Is if I'm there, I want to make sure that my blocking, my punching, my kicking, my jiu-jitsu, my wrestling, my judo is better than my opponent so that I can win that fight, right? I don't want to take the damage. I don't want to get knocked out. I don't want to get my arm broke, choked out, whatever. I want them to be in that position, right? So this one, I think, is transferable or translatable, okay? So you translate the self-defense and sporting to the same thing, in my personal opinion. The last one is what I always talk about. The reason we want to break that opponent down, separate from that attacker, keep my head on a swivel, minimize the damage is so I can get out of there, right? Remember, my self-defense approach that I'm doing, that I'm trying to teach it's not military, it's not police, right? It is 100% built for just your average bear, okay? And what I want to do in that is I want to, at the end of the day, I want to get home to my family. Okay, so find that escape route. Wear them down, minimize your damage, keep your head on a swivel, separate from them so you can get home, okay? And get out of there. So while you're fighting and you're taking on this attacker or attackers, you know, best you can, if you can find a way out of there, reverse, through there, whatever, do it and get out of there. If you can find a way to get to safety, you do it. Remember, we even talked about going across the street to avoid, right, a problem. There you go. There's my escape route. That way I don't have to do any of this stuff. I can just walk across the street where I got some thugs walking down, you know, looking for trouble, and I can just walk across the street and where I don't look like I'm running away, okay? Because that looks worse even, because then it's like this predator almost appeal to them, okay? So that one is, to me, is not translatable, because over here you're basically waiting until the match is done, right? Either you win by some kind of a takedown, knockout, points, whatever the case is, you win the match and it's over. You hear a bell, buzzer, whatever that may be. And so that to me is not something where I'm training again, right? Because this is, I'm tied up, I'm happy where I'm at, I'm fighting, yeah, buzzer, yeah, I'll win, I get points, whatever, and I go home. This one is life and death situation. I'm trying to find my way out of there, okay? So I don't think this one is translatable either, okay? So, I mean, if you look at the tenets, right, out of the 5 here, we have 2 that are and 3 that aren't. So I guess, and I kind of walked through this with me, because I hadn't done this before or in my head or even thought about it. I just wrote it down and wanted a video and think I'd talk about this. I think it shows that there really is a need to have 2 separate thoughts and 2 separate ways of training for fighting, right? Self-defense is not sport, and sport is not self-defense. There are things in sports absolutely you could use for self-defense, and there's things probably in self-defense you can use in sport, right? Where you've got more of a blended MMA type of level thing over to self-defense that would translate maybe better over here in some type of I don't know, whatever I don't know what they call them nowadays, you know, the types of fights, but whatever, like a mixed martial art fight, right? And I think there's things that you can do in the sporting that does help you become a better self-defense person, where you learn like how to stop a takedown, right? Or how to defend even when you're on the ground. You got to know those things. I mean, you have to know basic wrestling and jiu-jitsu. You need to know how to do some throws and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is more translatable to this than vice versa, because I think you can use things here, but I think the training is completely different. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hope you enjoyed this. That was fun walking through this and looking at it. I don't know, we came to a conclusion that obviously that there's differences between us, which we probably knew, and that you need to train probably different in both of these, which we probably already knew. But it's fun to go through this nonetheless. So, hey, until I see you again, keep training, take care.